Don Jones. Welcome to the Heart Dealer Podcast. How are you today?
I'm good. How are you? Thanks for having me.
You're welcome, and I am great. I don't know why I didn't think of this until today, but you have such a professional name, Don
Do
Jones.
I? I don't know if I've ever heard that, so that's a
I feel like
compliment. Yeah.
you should be an actor. Like it's an actor name. It's like Don Jones, destined for the stars.
I've never been told that, but I will take it 100%.
Amazing.
Oh,
We were chatting just now before, and obviously I'm going to start with family.
yeah.
How's your family?
Good, good. I have a little boy and he just turned 3 a week ago. So we're like fully in the throes of just wild toddler kingdoms. So he's good. And then we're also expecting another little boy in January. So we're like just full family mode right now, which is so fun.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
As you know, I have two. Technically, I have four. Technically, I have five because we're always going to count the one that we lost.
Nice.
Uh,
Nice.
it it gets crazier but easier. And as someone once wisely told me, love is expansive. So there's always more love. You always develop more love, and I'm looking forward to. I'm excited for you, is what I wanted to say.
Thanks. So we're excited. It's just such a fun. I didn't realize how fun it was going to be, but it's so fun. Just like the little kid world is just like, I don't know. It's just so fun. So we're excited. We're fully embracing the chaos.
As you should. I think that, for me, that's one of the things that I love about being a dad is being able to be a goof, and
Yeah,
it keeps me younger longer, and I'm, rolling around on the ground. I'm 45, I'm playing with Lego again,
there you go.
just enjoying being a five-year-old.
Yeah, you get to do all the fun stuff again. And yeah, and then this time you're the adult. So it's like nobody has to tell you to stop. You have to tell them to stop.
Very true. Talk to me about family. I family is so important, and for different people, it manifests in different ways. It can be the community, it could be your bandmates. Um, Talk to me about family and what it was like for you growing up, and how much support did you have, and did that help propel your career?
I would definitely say so. Yeah, I had a super tight-knit family, still do. We grew up around a lot of extended family as well, which was a really cool dynamic of just being able to constantly be around grandparents and cousins and aunts and uncles and just kind of had the whole clan there, which was awesome. But yeah, super tight-knit all the way around, just really encouraging. A lot of entrepreneurs in my family too, which have obviously informed a lot of what I do and have been great sounding boards and mentors throughout just business. But yeah, overall, I mean, definitely grew up in a family that was very much people who wanted you to pursue your passion and pursue your dream and do whatever it takes, and the whole 9 yards. Very supportive in that way, and so super blessed and fortunate to have that. And then just also like outside of family, have a really strong community, especially here where we live now. We just have a really strong community of friends that have become family. And so that's been really special to see in my adult years, moving away from, what I had growing up was all family members, but they were our community because we all lived in the same place, to now like living on my own and not around family and creating that family. It's been really special. So yeah, I would say family comes in a lot of different forms, and I've been really lucky to have a few different forms throughout my time. But yeah.
That's cool. I had no idea that you had other entrepreneurs in your family. What the
Yeah.
heck was that like
Quite a
growing up
lot.
around them?
Yeah, both. So I guess just going back to grandparents, both my grandfathers, my dad, several aunts and uncles who are entrepreneurs. Yeah, like very, very much. And which, funnily enough, I don't think I really ever paid attention to that until I started dabbling in entrepreneurship. And then I was like, oh, wait, I have all these resources available to me, which was cool. But yeah, it just kind of, I think it's just a little bit in our DNA, like a little bit of just the people that we are, of, seeing a gap or wanting to do something, or just wanting to do something on our own terms. I know that was
Mhm.
a reason for several, but just yeah, that kind of like that spirit is very vibrant in our family for sure.
Yeah, you and I share that point is wanting to do things on our own and wanting to do things to help others, I think are both big motivators for us. Anything of note, any of these entrepreneurs in your family, did they like invent, I don't know, a wagon or a spaceship?
Not that I'm aware. Most of them have very successful local businesses. So, doing a very wide variety of things from everything from insurance sales to boat repairs to selling carpet to a hair salon. Like there's a wide variety there. But
Yeah,
yeah, very successful local businesses and they've been doing it their whole adulthood. Their whole careers have been devoted to their businesses, which is cool, which gives me hope that hopefully I can make it that long.
I think so. You've got the tenacity to do so. It's funny because like local business is I think people automatically with entrepreneurs think like, Bezos or
Yeah.
Musk and these huge things,
Yes.
but, that's not always the case, and the funny thing with local is that it's all about community, right? Like, being something that impacts the community in a positive way and getting different people to whether it's your store, shop at your store, etcetera. It's not dissimilar to the music industry and the community that we're trying to help.
Right, right. I think too that kind of global perspective has come along with more of like the generation I grew up in where you had digital spaces just like really boom. And, before that, like all of these businesses were established before that. So that wasn't even like a thought for a long time, Like I think now people think automatically like, "Oh, you're an entrepreneur, you're doing this huge global thing." And like great
Mhm.
if you are, but like also you can have such a sustainable career not chasing the big global accolades, I think
Agreed.
that's something I see a lot for sure.
Being an entrepreneur is challenging, rewarding. One of the most important things that I had to learn, and I'm constantly relearning and improving, is time management. Like so that your every second is somehow used properly, while not becoming a robot. How do you balance being an entrepreneur and being a full time mom?
Yeah, so that was something I really had to learn with motherhood because before motherhood, it was very much my business was my baby, and I just spent all of my time pursuing that because I enjoyed it and it was fun. And not to say that it's not fun now, it still is. It's just like priorities shift and you have to learn how to juggle your time a little bit better. And so when motherhood came for me, that was a really big turning point in how I was managing my time. And I took my work hours. I was probably working on average like 40 to 60 hours a week. And now I work 10 to 15 on average a week and get the same amount done, which is incredible. I was like, what was I doing with all of that time? Like what was I doing and why was I spending so much time on it? And it's just because you don't know what you don't know. But um I've learned a lot of time management. Right now, I'm a big fan of like batching work, and so I batch my work days. I have typically 2 work days a week while my son's in preschool, and I have a whole day to get client meetings and tasks and things done. I rely heavily on a team, so I have support, which I think is really valuable. Just if you're gonna, especially if you're gonna scale and go beyond kind of what you're able to do at your capacity, or if you're wanting to keep your capacity less like I am right now in the stages of like early motherhood with little kids and not wanting to work a full 40-hour week. How do I maintain the workload and not sacrifice scaling my business but at the same time serve these clients well? And that's been by bringing on a really talented team that I trust and that I know can like carry out the task that the same way that I would. So the team has been really helpful. And then I've spent a lot of time over the last 3 or 4 years just streamlining and automating and processing my workflow to utilize technology to help me, but also to like make sure that what I'm spending my time on is the thing that moves the needle rather than the little tiny thing that doesn't make a huge difference in the end game. So
Mhm.
just like figuring out priorities, I think is a really big one because you figure out not only your priority for how you spend your time, but then you figure out, okay, if I'm going to spend 15 hours of my week on work, how do I prioritize that 15 hours within my business to make sure that 15 hours is going towards the thing that's really valuable versus the thing that doesn't matter in the grand scheme of things. And sometimes that means like letting things go. I've had to let a few things go that I thought mattered so much and it turns out they really made no impact, and sometimes that means, shifting your priorities or what you enjoy working on or it could mean a whole lot of things. But I think reprioritizing has been a big one for me. And then just on top of that, really streamlining and looking at processes and looking at operating procedures and making sure we're not wasting time, on fluff and things that don't have any impact. So
Yeah.
it's a process. I would say it's a never ending process too, because I feel like I'm always refining.
I
Al
I agree. I totally agree. The amount of documents that our teams have worked on that have, like,
Yes,
taken on version
yes,
16.4a, it's,
yes,
"Oh, and if we did this, we could be more efficient, and if we,
right,
like, add AI to the process right here in the workflow,
right,
then we automate these 2 things and save the man hours." I totally agree with you, and
yeah.
I think that that's the point. It doesn't ever end, and if you're too satisfied, then you're probably stagnating. ABL, always be learning, something like that?
Always, yeah, always be learning, always be refining, especially if it's something you wanna continue growing and not, like you said, stagnate. I think you should
Mm,
always be refining, always be looking for something else. And every time I feel like I'm close to the end of my to-do list, I come up with 15 other things that I'm like, "This would be really cool to implement into the business, and how would we do this?" And so it's just like, I feel like you should always be kinda searching and as the business owner, at least, as the entrepreneur, you should have that mindset for sure.
if you start getting stuck up against a wall, don't get frustrated, but
Yeah.
instead ask yourself why the wall is there. Maybe it's because that path is dead. I was so frustrated a few nights ago because I had finished another recording, another podcast, and the software I was using had been it was fantastic for the editing,
Mhm.
but it's much more, intricate and detailed, if there's more to know, and then the recording itself had been blurping, there'd been all these
Uh,
issues,
yeah.
and it's annoying when you put in, like, the time to research and then have an amazing conversation and it doesn't capture well, and it happened again, and I was like, "Damn, what do I do now?" So I started to look into new software, the software that we're using today, and I was just stressed because I had to start over with a bunch of stuff. But you know what ended up happening as I let it go and I said, okay, this is what you're supposed to do. Let's dive in. And then I, within 24 hours, realized, oh my God, I have so many automations and features built into this software that are going to make my life easier.
So
That
much
by
easier.
spending this day worrying and swapping over, I'm saving myself days of,
Yes.
right? So
Yeah.
flow.
It happens. It happens too. Like I've had that happen a lot this year. I feel like this has been the year where I've just been hitting roadblock after roadblock, and I don't know if it's because I'm expecting another kid and I'm, mentally preparing for what does that look like with my time, knowing how the first one affected my time and,
Mm,
things like that. But every single time I've come up on a roadblock, I've kind of had to just let it like say, okay, well, it's not meant to be this way. Let me let it go and let me figure out what plan B is. And every single time plan B has turned out to be such an improvement for the business. Like whether that was, letting a certain team member go, whether that was letting a certain platform go, both of which we've had to do this year that we heavily relied on. And then a week later, I was like, oh, this makes so much sense now. Like this was
yeah.
this needed to happen. This was like I was wasting XYZ and this was happening and now it's not happening. Like here we are. We're so much better off. So it's just like I think sometimes those things I think as an entrepreneur you can be really just tunnel vision and looking at the
Mm.
thing that you're trying to and not see what else is out there until you're forced to, at least I can. I have to sometimes have those roadblocks to be able to see like, okay, there's other options, there's other alternatives. This is not the end of the world. This is just a pivot in a better direction and I need to
Yeah.
think critically about this. So, yeah.
I mean, again, I agree with you. I learned over the last 2 years of my life have been very, crazy. Tumultuous is probably the word that comes to mind, and it's not a bad thing, I'm not complaining, this is good because change happens by choice or force, and
Mhm.
most of the time, humans choose force because we are adverse to
True.
change.
It's true.
So those walls are the force saying like, "Yo, no more.
Yeah.
Next." And you
Next.
just have to be adaptable, right? And pivot.
Right. Yeah. I think that's important. I think that's just an important lesson in life. If you're not adaptable, you're gonna really suffer.
Well, that's the point of these talks, life and work, and it's all intermeshed. So let's
Yeah,
go and pivot for a second.
that's right.
Fort Lewis College in Durango,
Right?
Colorado, 2015. What is a 2015 Dawn doing? What are you
Right.
studying?
Almost 10 years ago. That's crazy. I studied music business. So I went to school with the intent of doing something in the music industry. I also play fiddle, violin. So at Fort Lewis, they required you, if you were going to have any sort of music degree, you also had to be able to perform an instrument. So you kind of had a performance minor in a
Uh,
way, which a lot of colleges don't require that, like, especially if you're going into business. They're like, okay, that's your major, whatever. But yeah, I majored in music business, studied violin there as well to kind of complete those other requirements. And I grew up playing violin and fiddle and all that stuff. So I mean, it was truly a passion. I loved every second of it. But yeah, studied that and did not intend necessarily to go into PR. That kind of came after, but I knew I wanted to do something in the music industry. I knew probably at that stage in my life, I was still very focused on wanting to be in a place like Nashville and perform in some capacity. I know a studio musician kind of reality was something I was heavily looking at, and I did a lot of internships and shadowing and things like that here in Durango with studios, and played on a couple local CDs and things like that to kind of get my feet wet. But yeah, like just really was focused more on the traditional side, but was getting that business degree because I knew it would open a lot of doors and I knew I had the capabilities to do other things. And so just was kind of broadening my horizon with that. And it was not long after college that I kind of fell into the PR landscape and went down that whole rabbit hole and never looked back. So it happened very, very quickly. So
yeah. Tell me your dad without saying your dad. And immediately when you were
yeah.
telling me about university, you were
Uh-huh.
like, "So my minor was the fiddle," and
Yep.
immediately I was like, "So your fiddle was second fiddle to the major?"
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, it was fun. It
So
was a fun time, which I'm glad it
not
worked out the way it did. And my dad probably did have a little bit of sway in pushing me towards the business side, but he also knows me really well. So I think it worked out. I think he knew, which I say all the time now. I'm like 21-year-old Dawn had such vastly different expectations of her life than 30-year-old Dawn right now. Like, and had such vastly different ideas about what she wanted her day-to-day look like and what she wanted out of life and what her dreams and goals were. It's amazing how much can change in that time span. And so
absolutely.
now looking back, I'm in a lot of ways, I'm like, thank God what I had planned didn't work out because I don't think I would be like as fulfilled and as happy as I am now just in life versus the things I didn't know I wanted yet, that
Yeah.
came much later. But yeah.
That's another big, mindset shift that I've had too, is that life happens for you, not to you. We
Yeah.
have this habit of, as humans, no matter how bad something is, saying, "Why is this happening?
Mhm.
Why is this happening to me?" It's not. Most of the time it's happening for you to
Yeah.
show you that there's a block, to show you that something doesn't serve you anymore, and to propel you forward in a
Right.
better path. Keep your mind and eyes open to those opportunities, and you're gonna get farther ahead and then do exactly what you just said, which is
Yeah.
like, "Wow, I would have never chosen that. I'm so
Right.
happy." Yeah?
Right. Right. I also kind of think now that it's crazy that we do choose our life path at like 21 when you know nothing about
Yep.
anything. It's like I feel now like I'm just getting to where I'm like, okay, I understand and I see the bigger picture in things versus 10, 15 years ago when I was like planning for my future and picking all these making all these major life decisions that now I don't want any part of. Like now I've done a complete pivot in a lot of ways and want something totally different. I just think it's crazy that we're you know,
Yeah.
so young, kind of making those big decisions. And I think it goes back to that adaptability. If you're not willing to adapt and pivot, and sometimes like that might look like a failure on the outside or something, but it sets you up for success later. Like if you're not willing to do that, you're not gonna get to where you ultimately want to be. So
Yep.
yeah,
So what, just going back for a quick second, I want to talk about, music and
Mhm.
marketing and publicity and entrepreneurship. But what made you pick music? Why did you go into this
Loved it.
school with music business degree in
There's
mind? Why not something else?
something else. Well, and what's funny is before I had landed on pursuing music as a career, growing up, like, as a young kid, I always wanted to be in journalism. So I was like super nerdy about newspapers and like articles and things like that. We went to a few like TV shows and watched the anchor. So I always thought I was going to do something in that side of things, press. Which is funny that now I am working with the press just in a different capacity. But um, so I started playing violin. I was about 13. I played piano several years before that, and I just like really fell in love with music as in general, as a lot of people do, and just had a passion for my instrument and had a passion for just learning and increasing my knowledge there and performing. I grew up playing in a couple different bands, and we had some really cool experiences. And so it's just the music bug bit, and I was hooked. And so I knew I wanted to pursue something in the music industry because of that, just because I loved it. And so that's really what propelled me forward in looking for what can I go to school and do in music. And music business was one of those options. So
Cool. Um, so you finish school, you have a degree, you are not going to become a world-class fiddler or violinist, and you're like, I'm going to do music business.
yeah.
And then somehow you get an internship with Hello Dollface.
That actually happened during college.
Oh,
So
okay.
yeah, they were a band in my town that were really just killing it as far as gigging and touring and playing like 200 something shows a year. Like they were doing the full-time musician thing. They also owned a nonprofit here in my town that did music lessons for kids and was servicing schools and things like that. So they were very involved in the music scene in my town. And it was kind of the most logical place for me to start exploring what was out there. And so during college, I was their intern for both the nonprofit and the band, and just kind of did intern task, like was the little gopher that ran around and put up tour posters and show posters and things like that. But throughout that was kind of learning about like their business as an artist, their business as a band. And then in conjunction with that was studying, music business, which was teaching me a lot of different aspects of the industry as well. And so long story short, they had hired a publicist for one of their tours and it didn't pan out. And I had recently taken my publicity course through my music business program. And so they were like, do you think you could pick up the slack here and like, pitch us to a couple places or do this or do that? I was like, sure, I'll try. And so I started trying and, got a few little things here and there, but it was kind of my first taste of it. And it also really reminded me of what I mentioned earlier about being really interested in communications and kind of journalism. So that was kind of neat. But that was at the end of my college career. So as I was graduating, that kind of saga was happening. And ultimately, I had created a relationship with these people where they were like, we've trained you to do XYZ for the band, and you're like really supporting us. We don't want to train somebody else. They were like, "Can you just keep doing this?" And in my personal life, I was getting married, I was moving to Hawaii, like I was clean break, like, really not gonna be here around or whatever. But I also, my husband was military, so I also knew like, okay, Hawaii does not have the music scene that I have gone to school for. I don't know what I'm gonna do. And so I kind of knew that I needed something because in my head, after we did military life for a while, we were gonna go back and go somewhere like Nashville, and I was gonna find a corporate job in the music industry and like work and do that. And so I was like, they're not gonna like a 3-year gap on my resume. I was like, I need to find something to do. So I told this band, I was like, yeah, sure, I'll stay on and I'll keep doing these kind of support tasks for you, but I don't want to be an intern. I'm going to start a business and you guys can be my client. And that's where Press PR was born. And so I started that, again, with the intent of like a resume filler on my on my resume, not really like thinking like, I did think, I was like, if this works out great, I would love to do this. I was starting to get the idea of being in control of your own schedule and things like that. But like at that point, I wouldn't say it was my ambition to just go out and do this. It was kind of more of a, this happened, and so I don't want to be an intern forever, so I'm going to just start this and have this
Mhm.
going. And over the course of those 2 to 3 years that we were living in Hawaii and I was working with that band, I started working with other bands, and it just grew to that by the time we were done with military life and we were deciding where on the map do we wanna go and start a family and do all of this, the conversation came up and my husband was like, "Well, do you wanna go to Nashville?" And at that point, the business was sustainable, that as a career and like as a financial income, I was like, I don't think I do. I think I've changed my mind. I don't think I want to live there anymore. I think I want to go back to the mountains and find a little ski town and settle down, and like I think I want to do that and I'll keep doing this, and like I don't think I want to pursue that hustle of that, industry life, which we all know can be really demanding. I was like, I think I want
Mhm.
to go back and do this and be close to family. And so we did, and so it was, again, like, one of those things 3 years before, that's not at all what I was planning, but just by the way things had happened and the business had grown through word of mouth primarily, I was able to say, like, "Okay, I have options now. I can either continue pursuing this business and really pursue it wholeheartedly and, like, really make it into something, or I can this would be a great point for me to kinda, like, wash my hands and go do something, you know,
Mhm.
in the industry." And so I took a chance. And here
For
we
you.
are.
There's a lot to unpack there. First and
Yeah.
foremost, I have to address my disappointment that you didn't become a surf bum and open a poke shop. I mean, like, that's what you should have
You
done.
know what's funny is we never learned to surf in Hawaii. We do surf now. We learned to surf much later when my parents, they lived in California for a few years and we like got really into surfing for a hot minute. But when we lived in Hawaii, we never learned to surf. Isn't that such a waste?
It is. I've only been to Hawaii once, and, I had such a blast. I went with my ex. It was, like, 1 year
Mhm,
anniversary slash, late, honeymoon, and,
mhm,
I remember I think we were in Honolulu, and I remember, I apologize, I don't remember what the island's names are, but we were on that main island, and,
mhm.
we rented a Jeep and kinda did the drive around the whole island because it's not that big.
Yeah.
We got to the North Point and, found some random farm that had, like, windmills on it, and you drove up to the farm, and they had, like, horror movie character cutouts, like Jason Voorhees and stuff, and we're like, "Okay, this is either the worst or the best idea ever," and we got to the top, and it was a huge open field overlooking the ocean, and they had a farm, and there was a food truck, and they were, like, serving, meat that I guess they had raised and slaughtered there, like pulled pork and brisket, and it was incredible. And we started to talk about poke, and I said, like, I love this stuff. I'm a huge sushi guy. I love the raw fish. Where can I get the best stuff? And they said, well, 10 minutes down the road, I know you just ate, but we'll give you the directions. If you get to this gas station slash grocery store,
Mhm.
it looks like a horror movie was filmed there, and everything is like 50 years old and rusted out. You're in the right spot. And sure enough, we took the chance. I went there and I said, okay, food poisoning be damned. We're going to try this. It was the best poke ever.
Yeah.
Um, I really loved Hawaii. It was such a beautiful place. And we did this really cool balance of like high end and low end where our budget was so where if we saved money during the day by going to like get food from the local market and then just have some sandwiches and stuff,
Mhm,
then we would accrue more cash to have a nice like dinner out.
mhm.
So yeah, basically we can end the podcast here and I need to go. I'm disappointed you didn't stay there. Jokes aside, like it's incredible that I mean you said so many incredible things that I think people don't value as much as they should. The fact that, you went with your husband there and you changed everything, and that he, after that, came to you and said, "Where do you want to go now? Like, what do you?" That's a beautiful thing. I'm very happy for you both, and that love and that support is not just important at home, but it's important within the industry in general, and it's not always the easiest to find. So you've answered all my questions about, like, how do you stay motivated as an entrepreneur? Is you got support, you got family, you have love. That's
Yeah.
amazing. What's your favorite part about helping musicians?
Oh man, I think it's just getting to be part of their team and like getting to know that we are like really making an impact. It's not just like a fluff. Like we really want to be someone who helps support you. If that's not directly in PR, like how else can we do that? Can it just be like
Mhm.
when you and I hopping on a call and talking about your release rollout and like me like walking you through some strategies there? Is it like I have artists all the time who we worked with, a year or 2 ago or whatever it might be, and they, like, pop in, they're like, "Hey, Dawn, what do you think about XYZ?" Like, even if it's just being a sounding board, I think it's
Uh-huh.
just, like, really, like, building that community and knowing that we're supporting people who are so passionate about what they're doing and that we're, like, helping them to achieve that dream for them to be sustainable with their music career. It's
Yeah.
not just promoting it, it's not just getting it on a awesome publication. It's not just getting to a certain number of streams. It's like you're helping somebody like really chase after their passion. And like when you get to see that person to person, one to one, it's really special. And I think that's especially special in the indie scene, like working with independent artists specifically. I have such a heart for that because we have dabbled and worked with labels and we've dabbled and worked with huge artists that sell out stadiums and we've had those experiences and it's not the same feeling as helping an indie artist who's putting out their first single and they, like have people listening to it. It's just such a different dynamic. And so I love that. I love the community that we're building as we're helping and just knowing that we're a support team that people can come to and we'll be straight up with you. We're going to be transparent with
Yeah.
you. If something doesn't work, I'm going to be like, "Hey man, I don't think that's a good idea." Like like I'll tell you, but it's just like just being that for somebody is really rewarding, I think.
Yeah, I agree. You, in several of your bios and online, reference new music industry, basically championing artists, staying independent. Why is that something that's important to you in, well, I was gonna say in this day and age, but like just period. Why is it something
What
that's
is it?
important to you to be?
I think because I think it kind of goes back to that entrepreneurial spirit because being an artist is being an entrepreneur. You have a brand,
Uh,
you have a business, you're running a business. I think a lot of people miss that when they're looking at being an artist. They think, "Oh, I'm a creative," and you are, but I'm also a creative as a business owner. Like
mhm,
I'm creating all the time. And so it's just like I think that that point is missed by a lot of people. And so I think really for me it goes back to that entrepreneurial spirit of you don't have to be under the wing of a label. If you want to be great, like there's still I could walk outside right now and pull 10 people off the street that like want a 9 to 5 or want a corporate job and like want that. But like for me, knowing that I can go and achieve my own thing under my own parameters, is so cool. And I think that's the same thing in the music industry. As an independent artist, you can do that. You can achieve success under your own parameters. You can set the tone for what you're putting out into the world. You can set the tone for how you behave in the world. You don't have to do things for likes or for clicks or for, like you get to set the pace and you get to make it
mhm,
work for you and your lifestyle and your definition of success, which is probably different from your next door neighbor. Like success is not this one thing that we all aim to achieve. It can look so many different ways. And so I think that's what's really beautiful about just kind of the barriers to entry being lowered for artists is that you can be a successful, sustainable artist and not be selling out stadium tours. And I know
yeah,
so many artists who are 100% full-time musicians doing their own thing. They have families, they're supporting families, and they're independent that allows them to do their own thing and kind of set the pace that they want to do versus someone setting the pace for them. So that's that's what I'm really excited about for the industry.
I agree. I think that staying as independent as possible is ideal. You do have to work with a team. It takes a village, right, so to
Totally.
speak. I often say that where artistry ends, business begins, and there is a slight overlap, but they're not one and the same. And if you want to keep focused on the artistry, then you need support in the other areas, especially in 2025, because so much of our business and marketing is online, and so
Yeah.
you be a content creator, you have to spend time doing.
Mhm.
I mean, it's no different than me being an entrepreneur and now I do a podcast. This is
Right.
my content creation.
Yeah.
This is my marketing, and it's a lot of work.
Yeah.
Um, what there's so many publicists out there that are not good, for lack of better words, that are, pulling the wool, taking the money, thinking that they can, and maybe it's not malicious. Maybe they think it's easy that they're going to get a whole bunch of stuff, and then bands get screwed. How does a band identify a good publicist in
Yeah.
2025?
Well, and like I said before, that's kind of like where I came from, was that had happened to the band I was interning for, you know? And so coming into this industry, I was like, well, that's the thing we're not going to be, is like we're just going to be transparent, which I think is a huge thing missing in a lot of industries, but especially the music industry. But I think like looking for red flags, the red flags I would look for, really big guarantees are impossible unless they're using a different method of PR. And PR is changing, and we can talk about that because you do have the widespread use of advertorials now, versus traditional pitching. You do have things like that where people can guarantee you things. But I believe that that should be transparent. Like, I believe the artist should know what they're paying for. If they're paying for your connection to set up an advertorial, great. Let them know that. They're still getting the article, but don't tell them like, we're going to pitch you and we can guarantee you from our pitch we're going to get Rolling Stone, because you can't, because you're dependent on the writer or the editor that you're pitching to. And so I think just being like transparent, if they're not willing to be transparent with you about their methodology, if they're not willing to chat with you on the phone and answer questions, if you don't ever speak to a person, that's obviously a red flag. And if they're just like, like just promising the moon, and you're an indie artist that's got 500 streams on your song, then it's probably a red flag. Like, you have to bring a certain something to the table too to get the moon. So it's like, just be aware of what people are saying and promising, and like understand what PR is and understand how the industry works. And I think you could probably pick that out for yourself, and for the most part. But I think if they're not willing to communicate, that's the big thing. Like a lot of publicists that I've encountered in the past, or artists that I've worked with that have come from other places, have said like, my publicist wouldn't tell me who they were pitching, or they wouldn't share this, that, or the other. And I'm like, that's a red flag to me. Like, if they're not willing to share what they're doing for you, that's a red
Mhm.
flag. Like, if they're only giving you deliverables at the end and they're not willing to share answer questions about like if they're following up or who they're contacting in the first place, that doesn't mean you have to give out proprietary contact information that like gives away your secrets. But if you're like, yeah, I'm pitching X, Y, and Z for you, we'll see what happens. Like, what's the harm in that,
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. So,
We're the same way. I mean, like, I try to do video calls with every new client, even when we don't have a client signed yet. I'll take a
yeah.
video call. You can see me, you can put a face to a name. And the first thing we do once someone signs is, okay, we get on a team call. You can meet my
Mhm.
entire team, everyone that's going to be working with you. We set up a private Discord channel so that you have 24/7 access to us. And whether or not we're not talking, at least you know that you can leave a voice note, you can leave
Yeah.
messages. And conversely for us too, right? We need to be able to get information of an
100%.
exclusive quote, whatever. It has to be open and free flowing.
Yeah, it definitely does. And there are certain things you can do with like minimal interaction, if like you're really looking for someone to take it and do it and you don't want to be involved. But PR is one of those things, like, somebody's telling your story, you better be involved a little bit, and making sure that story is coming out the way you want it. Because if you're not, and they tell the story and they get it on publications, and then you come back and you're like, I don't like this. It's like, well, were you involved in the process? Like, did you communicate too? Because that's a huge part of what we do. And we do the same. We do like the video calls and everything. And I always do calls with people before we sign them to see if it's going to be a client I can work with. Cause like we talked about earlier, time is limited these days.
Yeah.
And if I get the vibe immediately that like they're not going to participate, they're not going to communicate, I'm like, I don't know if we're the best fit, you know, like I don't know if that's the right model for us. So I think communication, that's the biggest thing to look for with a PR company is like, are they communicating with you? Are they providing you avenues to communicate with them? If so, is probably going to be great. But if not, that's for sure a red flag. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good point. I think a lot of artists don't realize that it's a two-way street, that we too will turn down stuff if it's not a fit for us. It's not just like a
Right.
sign done every time.
Right.
Um, what is one thing you wish bands knew about, like, just about PR before actually starting to work with you?
Well, what we just said is a two-way street. That's a good one to lead into. I wish they just knew more about like what PR is. A lot of people we talk to think PR and marketing are the same, and they're really not. And so, like, understanding those differences, understanding that marketing drives numbers, it drives stats. So, like your streams, your listens, your follows, things like that. It's direct. It's a direct ROI. PR is really about credibility and reputation. And so, because we get you an article in American Songwriter doesn't mean your streams are going to jump up by 1,000 that day. You know, it's like there's not a direct correlation in those kind of things. And that's the biggest misconception that I encounter with independent artists is that they're like, oh, we did all of this and like my streams are still the same. And I'm like, well, that's because we weren't working on streams. We were working on your credibility in the industry and your reputation in the industry. And so now when you type your name into Google, what do you find? And, you know, like have to kind of walk them through that process. But I think that's a really big misconception is people think that it's all the same type of promotion and it's not. There's two different buckets. They rely on each other. They need each other. You need to be doing both.
Mhm.
But at the same time, they're very different tools, you know? It's like coming to work on something with a hammer versus a screwdriver. Like they're going to do two very different things. And so just understanding that what you're getting into. And we do a lot of that in our initial consultation calls. I do a lot of educating for sure. And we have a lot of resources available on our site that educate on like what is PR? What am I paying for? Why would I pay for somebody for it? You know, and just like really understanding what it is before you just dive in and you think, oh, okay, I'm going to spend this money and I'm going to get 100,000 streams because you're not. That's not how it works, you know?
Yeah.
That's a different promotional tool. So, yeah.
It's funny how many artists still hang their hat on their streams and their Spotify monthlies and things like that, and it's, to your point, it's the challenge is to make them see the big picture. I
Mhm.
feel like they're like, "Ah, articles, SEO, isn't that old stuff?"
Yes.
I mean, sure,
That's
you
what
can
people tell
blow up
me
in
all the
different
time.
areas, right? Like, there's
Yeah.
TikTok, there's IG, there's so many
Right.
different areas to blow up, but at the end of the day, the largest search engine in the world is still Google. I
100%.
believe the second largest, and I could be wrong, but I believe the second largest is still YouTube, right? So if you think about algorithmically how you're gonna make the biggest impact,
Right.
it's SEO, and it's that, when you're trying to get a publicist or when you're trying to get a booking agent or maybe
Mhm.
book a show at that club, what's the first thing they're gonna do? Most of the time, they're gonna Google you.
Yeah. Even and that's what I tell people, I'm like, even if you blow up on TikTok, where is that fan gonna, like, gain their trust for you as an artist? They're gonna go Google you, or they're gonna go find you somewhere else, and you need to
Yeah.
be findable somewhere else, you know? Like, it's not a one and done situation by any means. Yeah, that's just I hear that a lot, and that's why we spend a lot of time really, like, educating on that in the industry because I think that's where a lot of miscommunication can come into and where a lot of artists can think like, "Oh, I was wronged by this publicist." And sometimes like I'll encounter somebody that says that and I'll say, "Well, I'll ask a few follow-up questions." And it turns out they weren't really wrong. They just didn't know what they were paying for. You know, they
Mhm.
didn't know the service that they were purchasing. And so it's like understanding that I think is half the battle, really.
Yeah. And it's not to say that one, platform is better or worse. I
Right.
think that you could start looking at all of them, all ecosystems, and then if something is doing well, lean into that. We had an artist recently who he's been getting great, like, pickup interviews, news, premieres throughout his campaign, but his Spotify numbers have been poor. Not for lack of trying and not for quality of music, and then all of a sudden recently he said like, "Hey, I'm really noticing, like, pickup on SoundCloud." And so we said, "That's great. We don't know why, but the first thing you need to do is lean into it, right? Go and learn SoundCloud, figure out the community, start to engage, tighten up the profile, whatever it is, because you can never tell where something's going to come from." I thought that, my podcast was going to take off on Spotify first, but it's YouTube where it is moving faster. And so I have to learn that platform more and lean into it. That doesn't mean the other ones aren't important, but right now that's the focus, because like you said, we only have so much time.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, and to that point too, like, I would also say just I don't know how I wanna word it, just you were saying, like I don't know, I had something on the tip of my tongue. You were saying that with understanding, like, leaning in, oh, I know where I was going with that. Give me a second, it's mom brain just kicking in, it's 3 o'clock. The leaning in part, that was the biggest. So PR is a tool in the overall promotional category, right? Like, you need to be experimenting with more than one tool. You need to be experimenting with a lot of different things, and that was kind of the reason that we took the journey from being just a PR agency into the collective of finding reliable partners that could support the other promotional tools that we can't support, and offering that artist that holistic experience of like, hey, here's a team. It's like a Swiss Army knife. They do more than one thing. Let's figure out which tool on the Swiss Army knife works best for you specifically, and then let's
Mhm.
lean into that. And so a lot of artists that we work with in the collective that we're working with on more of a development basis where we're kind of guiding and strategizing for their brand, we're trying everything in the beginning. Like, we're trying all of it. We're looking at two things. We're looking at where does the artist thrive in like what they're able to produce and create, and where's that, and where are their fans like really latching onto that. And then you can really, like you said, focus more on that and make it go further and put more time and energy into that one thing than trying to do all 50 things that everyone on the internet tells you have to do. So it's like
Yeah.
I think finding a team that will experiment with you is great, because PR is great and it has its purpose, but so does marketing, so do ads, so do social media strategy. Like, all of it is kind of, you need to be looking at all of it instead of just one piece. And that's another, as you were talking about, I was like, that's another thing I hear from a lot of artists is they're focused on one piece. They have tunnel vision on one piece, and that's not always the thing that like unlocks the door for them. So
Yeah. I
experiment.
mean, I think that you and I agree so much in that point because our companies are essentially doing the same thing, right? We
Yes.
started very much as promotion as
Yeah.
well,
Yeah.
promotion and marketing as it started to expand. And then we realized it's a one-stop shop.
Yeah.
We can have the same business model and we can offer these artists 20 years of industry experience, like
Right.
condensed down into all these different documents and these different conversations. And effectively, you start to act like a manager, a
Yeah.
therapist,
All of
a
it.
friend, a trusted, right?
Yeah.
Trusted advisor, distribution, everything.
Yeah, yeah, it's the same. It's been fun having that same trajectory and kind of like watching each other grow, because that's the same thing that we've been realizing and leaning into too. Is like, you need someone who's holistic, and especially
Mhm.
if you are doing it independently, like we talked about, you need that village. Find a village that can like really go to all the different places with you, and where you can figure out what works best for you. Because what works best for you won't work best for your neighbor, and
Yeah,
it's very case by case, very different across the board. So,
I agree.
yeah.
Case by case and time based. Sometimes it's like everything works for that same way, but only for these 3 months, and then it's on to the next
Right?
shiny object.
100%. Yeah.
What is a piece of promo that you landed that even surprised you? Where you're like, "What? What did we just get?"
Uh, there's been quite a few over the last 10 years where I was like, wow, that was exciting. The biggest one though would be Billboard. We landed a Billboard piece. We've landed two in our tenure with working with independent artists. And both times it was like, holy cow, that was, with an independent artist, that's hard to get. And
Yep.
the fact that we were able to get it speaks a lot to the artist. We had the connection, sure, but the artist really brought the product and the package and like
Uh,
were interesting enough for them to write about. But I mean, that's top of the game, right? That's like the pinnacle of what you're trying to achieve as a publicist in the music industry is a billboard feature. And so landing that and having landed it twice for independent artists was super exciting, super mind blowing, something we definitely celebrated, but like props to the artist too, because they were the reason we could land it. It wasn't just because we had a certain email. So yeah,
takes the team. It's not just the
takes a
music.
team. Yeah.
Um, is it harder working with the new independent artists who maybe have a lot of learning curve to deal with versus more of a celebrity artist or experienced artist? What do you find more challenging? I know which one's more rewarding, but which one's more challenging?
Um, I mean, yes and no. The learning curve, I think, depends on the person. So, like, the learning curve doesn't scare me. It's the person's willingness to learn that is
Uh,
what I'm really looking for to see, like, is this going to be someone that's easy or hard to work with? But a learning curve, you can accomplish that. No, I mean, no matter what, and you typically are anyways. So like that part doesn't frighten me. I we have in the past worked with some celebrity artists and kind of bigger names, and we don't anymore. And that's just because personally for me that was harder. The expectations are higher. They demand a certain thing. Usually the communication is a little bit less than someone who's like, putting their own personal money into it and like want to see it successful. Like you can get good placements and everything, but I find that it's a lot more stressful. And just in the phase of life that I'm in with, being a mom and having other life priorities, we collectively made the decision about 3 years ago that we weren't going to take any bigger clients like that for a little while, just because it's a different challenge for sure.
yeah,
It's a different landscape. It's a different look, different pressure. And you're also dealing with managers and people at the label, and they have certain expectations versus just dealing with a manager and an indie artist, So it's a very different dynamic, and one that just personally that I wasn't willing to take on for at least for a little while. I might return to that side of the scene one day. Never say never, right? But like right now, while I've got little kids, I'm like, that's enough stress, man.
I totally, I totally understand. I actually, it's funny because we are not a label. We are not like anything specific. We try to be a catch-all. Like I said, we're an artist development organization, an
Yes.
artist development agency. We try to do everything. And in the instances where we've worked with artists that have managers or have a publicist in the UK, whatever it is, it's always proven more challenging for us because we don't get that creative control. We're the advisors. We're the experts that they're paying for, that they're hiring. It's tough to do that job when you then have to explain it to someone else or get buy-off from someone else.
Right.
So we have done a really good job, I think, so far of saying to all clients, We don't work for you,
Mhm.
we work with you.
Mhm.
It has to be collaborative.
Be
We're
collaborative.
never gonna tell you what to do. We'll strongly suggest and or encourage. Ultimately, the choice is yours.
Yes.
But we wanna put together the most comprehensive campaign or marketing plan for you possible, and if there's someone else chirping or saying like, "Well, we're not gonna do this, we're not," it's tough. So I think that there's a place for publicity alone when it comes to the dynamic of management, label, etcetera. But when you're an artist development agency, you're really better off just doing everything on your own.
Yeah, I fully agree with that, especially the collaborative, like, that is so crucial if to be collaborative in that space, and like you said,
Right.
like, you could do a piece of it maybe as a service or whatever, but even then, you're limited in your creative control, you're limited on the PR side, you can be, but yeah, and it's hard to say, like, there have been a few instances where we've had a a recognizable name come through our inbox as an inquiry, and I'm like, it's really hard for me not to take this meeting right now. Like it's really hard for me to say we're not the best fit for this. Or you see a certain budget and you're like, dang, that's really hard for me to say that's not the best fit. But just knowing, having experienced it and knowing what comes with it is like, back to the initial discussion of priorities and life, like you have to take that into consideration too. And so figuring out where that is. If you'd have asked me 5 years ago before I had kids when I was working 60-hour weeks, I probably wouldn't have passed on some of those opportunities that I've passed on now because that was my life. So I think there's a season for everything, but I definitely think out of the two, like working with someone who's independent and just coming up versus someone who's really established and already has a team, I think it's harder to jump into that already established team if you're expected to bring a certain creative control and like you said you can't, or you've got reins on. Like it's harder, it's a lot harder.
Yeah, agreed. Um, okay, why don't we wrap up with something fun? Pressed PR, Fresh Noise Distro, Pressed Fresh Collective, baby number two.
Oh,
How are
baby.
you gonna do it all? What are you
I
even
know.
thinking over?
I ask myself that every day. I don't know. I think just take it day by day and figure out. We're like I said a few times, we're kind of in a season of pivoting a little bit and figuring things out and just focusing on priorities. And that comes with the business too, like focusing on priorities within the business. Like I said, I have an entrepreneurial spirit. So I'm always thinking of 100 things we could do to expand this business and do this and do that and do
Mhm.
that. But at the end of the day, I'm like, physically, I cannot do all of this. And so I have to pick what's important. And right now, for me, that's family life. And that is growing a family, and the business will be there. And when my kids are older and they're in school or they're busy during the day and not with mom all the time, I can come back to this and say, okay, we have maintained a solid foundation and we've done this. We've been supporting artists, and now it's time to put all those ideas that I dreamt up when I was rocking babies to sleep into play. And
Yeah.
so, like, come back in 5, 10 years and ask me again, and it might be different, but probably will be different. It probably will be a different business, but that's how it should be. It should always be evolving. And so I'm just kind of taking that with a grain of salt and saying, like, I can't do it physically the way that I'm doing it now. So we have to evolve. Is another one of
Mhm.
those roadblocks of we have to evolve. This is a happy roadblock, right? Of another kid, but it's like still we have to evolve so that everything can continue into the future. So
Agreed.
yeah.
I've long since admired how hard you push. I mean, we met through the little indie blog that you had, which
Yeah.
eventually like we merged into our main website, and then your PR and promo stuff to start to
Yeah.
blossom, which was part of my inspiration. Um, it's tough to keep going, but you have to do it, take it a day at a time, like you said, and embrace the marathon. It's not a race, it's a
That's right.
marathon.
It's a marathon, not a sprint. We say that a lot in PR too.
Yeah. Well, whatever you're doing, keep doing it because you're inspiration to a lot of people like me in the industry. And I see all the stuff that you're constantly innovating and changing. Like, now you're doing tons of YouTube stuff as well. And you've
Yeah.
got a really cool newsletter that's coming out that I think there's
Yeah.
a lot of value in for artists. And we believe the same thing is just because you're not a client of ours, that doesn't mean we can't give you help and information.
That's right. Yeah. I love the community aspect too, just the independent music community. It's so much fun, and the people you meet and just the connections that are made. That's like at the end of the day, that's what makes the business fun, cuz you can certainly get to a point where you are stressed and where things are not fun if you don't have those little glimmers throughout. So, the community is a big piece of that for sure for us.